Become a member today. Head over to burnthisworld.com and click the Become a Member button. That membership helps support me doing the Burn This World podcast full time, and it also helps me as a full-time musician. You get a lot of exclusive content on there, not only for the podcast, but also on my music side. So you hear Browning music before it's released. You hear music that never got put on records. You also hear stuff for other projects that I'm working on. You get entered into giveaways every single month for merchandise. So you get all sorts of cool stuff, and it really does help support. It's only $3, but that $3 goes a heck of a long way collectively. So again, burnthisworld.com, click Become a Member for $3 a month or $30 for an entire year, and help support everything that we're doing at the Burn This World podcast and that I'm doing as a full-time musician. I appreciate you. Hey, what's up? This is Jonny McBee, and you're listening to the Burn This World podcast.
Yeah, I grew up in upstate New York, and I just remember in the 90s, I don't know if you remember a band called All Out War.
Yes.
So, did you ever, I think it was at the Chance. Do you
Yes, I
remember
know
that
the
band,
Chance, yeah.
There's all these just like,
Is that Poughkeepsie?
It's like, what's that?
Is that Poughkeepsie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just smashed beer bottles on the fucking the floor, and people just getting the shit beat out of them, and it was just like, the fuck, like,
Yeah.
you don't really see that much anymore.
No, you really don't, and especially at the Chance, because the pit area at that is like probably 15 foot by like 5 foot.
Yeah. It's like a shoebox.
Yeah, literally. My band always quotes it because one of the last times we were there, instead of calling for a circle pit, I said spin this rectangle, because they're just in this little square rectangle there.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the proper way to mosh is? Good question.
It's weird. I don't know if it's because of my age, but I don't really, when I go to a show, I'm kind of like far away from everybody. So it's kind of like what I want the fans to do. It's kind of, I like to observe it.
Yeah.
So whatever they do, I mean, I try to provoke the worst when it comes to moshing.
Yeah,
so
true. That's our job.
Yeah, but I don't want to be involved in it. So do your thing. I'll be on the other side of the room.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm as far away from a pit as I possibly can be when I'm at a show. So I'm right there with you. But I have kind of stopped calling for the hardcore dancing because it does seem to lead to more fights and that sort of thing. So I've tended away from it, but I still can't help myself sometimes. I still call for it. So it's just natural.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because when we perform, I'm always provoking the worst in a mosh pit, but then when it gets to a point where it becomes like actual fighting, I remember playing a show and this dude is just beating the fuck out of this girl.
Yeah.
And I literally stopped the whole thing, and I'm like, beat the fuck out of him or get him out, you know, like you just don't do that shit. You know, I think it's just like there's a fine line of the respect when it comes to it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, I've definitely on stage been like, I want to see violence, swing those fists. And then when people start fighting, I'm like, what are you idiots doing? Like, it's like, you asked for it, dude. Come on.
Yeah, it's when it just becomes like not fun anymore.
We want fun violence, not angry violence.
Yeah, they should use it towards the right.
There you go.
Sources, I guess.
Definitely. Do you prefer on the electronic side of music, do you prefer it to where it is more in what am I trying to say? Included in another genre, or do you prefer just like straight electronic music?
Well, I mean, we incorporate metal with the industrial electronic side, and to me, what I tell everybody, because I'm the one who actually writes all of Donna Bash's albums, it's more of mood based. It's like whatever I'm feeling is what makes the music, whatever I'm listening to currently. So I guess it just depends. It depends on the album and what's going on in my head.
Well, that's the beauty of synths is you can get so much out of synthesizers as so many emotions and so many different levels of energy. You can have a really soft synth that gives a nice atmosphere, and then you can have a really hard, aggressive synth that makes you want to mosh, even though it's just a synth.
Yeah, it's just my inspirations is so all over the place. I remember certain points I'm like, oh, I'm only gonna listen to black metal and incorporate black metal into this. And
Hmm.
then I don't know if it's like the older I got, I'm just kind of like picking off of everything now.
Definitely. Yeah. And so whenever you're sitting down in the writing process, because I think you're in a very similar situation to me where you are writing them like everything. And you said that you started Dawn of Ashes back in 2001.
Yeah, 2001.
Yeah, and I started the Browning back in like 2005 or so, and it's
No,
been a solo project essentially since then. I've had members throughout the years, but no one that was really like a creative force in the process of it, to a heavy degree. And so when I get this question nonstop from people that are fans of the band, and I'm sure you do as well, like whenever you sit down to write, um, in this in these songs that have so many layers, have so many different influences, what is the first thing you go to get the basis of your song? Like, what is the first kind of sound you're looking for? Or is it based off of like lyrical content that get turned into music? Or is it just like you're finding the vibe? What's the first thing you go to really find the basis of your song?
see that's a rough question because it all depends on what I'm currently going through, what is inspiring me. Like like the last album, Scars of the Broken, I was going through a lot of personal
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So that was the main drive for the album. And I actually didn't care where it was going to go. I
Yeah.
didn't care if no one liked it. It was kind of like one of those things I had to put out there. I had to do. So that was kind of the driving force of that album. But also I do a lot of stuff with Eurorack modules, so I started writing with a lot of hardware, just kind of fucking with like weird sounds from Eurorack modules.
Mm-hmm.
And but I feel like I have a structure in my writing with Dawn of Ashes, so no matter what is going on or what my inspiration is or what's going on in my head, I still have my formula.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kind of makes every album a Dawn of Ashes album. They may sound different, but there's still that formula.
Yeah, and I mean, and for anyone that is listening to this that doesn't know Dawn of Ashes sound, it's very, very heavy electronic, industrial, but with some very, very heavy vocals as well. And so, I personally really enjoy that style. I'm familiar with Dawn of Ashes music a lot because a lot of Browning fans request that music in like live streams and everything. So it's
Right.
very relative, and it's actually part of a conversation that I have quite a bit where I say, like, I would love to do a project that was like pretty much fully electronic, but had a metal like tonality. And your music is that exactly.
Yeah, and it's what I've noticed with industrial metal, there's not a lot of industrial extreme metal bands.
Yes.
The only I mean, there's a few, but the main one I can think of is Fear Factory, and that was
Yeah.
such a huge inspiration. And I don't know if you remember Nail Bomb back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't really heard anything where it's like I don't know.
I would say the closest thing would maybe be Author and Punisher. And his stuff is very crazy, but yours is even more metal like tangent than his is, I would say. He's just doing some crazy unique stuff. Have you seen his setup?
I saw him live with
Yeah.
Three Teeth.
Hmm.
I don't even remember. It was a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
but yeah, his stuff's dope. I like how he created this
Machine.
monster machine thing that
Yeah.
he does. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty cool.
But see, so I love aspects of industrial music, but as a whole, I don't particularly like industrial because a lot of times it can get too drony for me. It can be too like samey throughout. Just my part, maybe I'm ADHD or it's, I got into things in a little different way. But like your music, it does just have this like very heavy drive to it that I do enjoy it quite a bit more than standard industrial music. And so where was your first kind of influence in the industrial, like straight? Because I would actually put your music more towards industrial than any other genre. I don't know if you would. Um,
So when I created Dawn of Ashes, it was my solo
mhm.
thing, and I started it because I was tired of dealing with other
Oh, for
musicians.
sure.
I
Yeah.
just did not jive with other musicians. And originally I was gonna do an industrial, like straight black metal group.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember The Covenant.
Yes.
W- Not the like EBM group, but the actual black metal
Yeah. Yeah.
Covenant with a K. I was there. I don't remember what album it was. I was really into that album, and I was like, "Fuck, I want to just do something like this. Maybe like me and a guitarist, and that's it."
Hmm.
And then I started going to some of the industrial goth clubs in Hollywood in the early 2000s, and I there was a couple of acts that I started getting into, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to create this type of music,
Yeah.
and I got good at it. And but then there was a certain point where I wanted the metal side. I miss performing with a band.
Hmm.
I missed like heavy breakdowns. I missed, you know, just the whole vibe of being in a metal band. So
Hmm.
I kind of made the mistake in 2012 and kind of went full extreme metal. And
Hmm.
we signed to Metal Blade, and there was a lot we alienated or all of the fans that, you know, grew up listening to us to the more industrial sides.
Yeah. And
So I thought that was the wrong
industrial
approach.
fans are very diehard too.
Yeah, I mean, same metal fans are as well,
Well,
I
I
think.
mean diehard as in like if someone likes industrial, a lot of times that is absolutely what they listen to. Like
It's true.
that's
It's
it.
true.
Uh,
You know,
and so
they
did
hear
you?
guitars and they're like,
Yeah, exactly. Or if the guitars are a little too like crisp, then they're like not happening. It needs to be a lot muddier, a lot more fuzz going on.
right.
So you felt like so Dawn of Ashes itself went full band and went and signed to Metal Blade and everything.
Yeah, it was around 2010,
Yeah.
and we released like two straight up metal,
Hmm.
symphonic metal albums, and we went on tour with Dimmu Borgir,
Dang.
and then we left Metal Blade, and I decided to bring all the industrial back in, but not alienating the metal
Hmm.
sound, which, in my opinion, we should have done
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Definitely. And
So
so
that
did you feel like kind of like did Metal Blade push you in the direction like maybe you should get more metal to be with us? Or did you more so just like you said, you wanted to kind of have that full band thing going again? And at that time there wasn't really too much of like music like ours that is a full collaboration between electronic and metal band. And interesting, that's right around the time whenever the Browning was really getting going too. So did you feel like you had to get more metal to be like a touring band in that time?
I was, to be honest, I was kind of nervous about
Hmm.
incorporating what we were doing with metal,
Hmm.
and now I'm seeing a lot of bands doing
Oh
it.
yeah, oh yeah,
I'm
100%.
like, fuck, if I just kind of wasn't afraid to do that, maybe, I don't know, maybe things would be a little bit different. But things happen for a reason,
Right.
and I think each Dawn of Ashes album has its own charm.
Yeah.
So
I think right now is the best time to be doing electronic metal collaboration. I mean, you're now it's like the main style of music in video games, a lot of like movie trailers. It is absolutely the best time to be doing like aggressive electronic like rock metal stuff. And so I think that people like us that have been doing it for so long actually have a big advantage to take advantage of that.
I know, and seen bands doing it now.
Hmm.
I saw Motionless in White come out of nowhere, and I was just like, you know,
Yeah.
it was a trip saying Motionless in White because I was like, oh, they have this look that we've been doing for a long time, and
Uh-huh.
they actually pulled off the,
Yeah.
mixing whatever metalcore and industrial, I guess.
And so doing that even with that same look and that style, like why do you think it is that something like Motionless in White really pulled it off in a way that has been so hyper successful? Now they do have stuff that is a lot more commercially accessible than stuff like than me and you, right?
Right.
But what do you think it is that really had them popping off?
I think they have a young crowd,
Mhm.
who's never heard the stuff that we've heard.
Oh, definitely. Like they are a now especially an introductory to heavier music band for a younger generation. 100%.
Yeah, the whole like goth thing or industrial thing. These younger kids don't know what it is. Motionless in White is basically the new Marilyn Manson that
True.
you know. I don't know if you're ever into Marilyn Manson,
Yeah.
but
Oh, for sure.
Antichrist Superstar, and
Hmm.
that was the album that kind of, I feel like these kids now gravitate towards Motionless Light the same way we gravitated towards, Antichrist Superstar and all those albums.
Definitely. I mean, they have a big sound and they have a big image and really, yeah. I kind of mentioned that to Ricky when I had him on the podcast. I was like, do you see you guys as this band that people are going to look back and have like feelings like me and you do towards maybe Marilyn Manson or like you with Nine Inch Nails? Like it's interesting to think like, and especially now with how long we've been doing music. I have people that are coming up to me that are like, I started listening to you in elementary school. And I'm like, you're an adult. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, that's funny because I just had this conversation because I was like, fuck, I feel old because people will come up to me and they're like in their 30s. They're like, I grew up listening to you guys in, middle school and high school. And I'm like,
You know, it's crazy, isn't
fuck,
it?
been doing this that long.
Right. Yeah. And so what do you see as the biggest difference in the industrial music, not only sound wise, but in that kind of scene and the stuff that you make? Like what do you see as the biggest difference from whenever you started this, 2001, till now?
I mean, the music industry has just changed drastically. And, in 2001, what do we have? MySpace? Was MySpace around in
I
2001?
think that was like kind of right around the start.
Okay. So I, I know that we became successful from MySpace.
Mhm.
There was no algorithms and all this bullshit that we have to
Yeah.
deal with now. It's like you go on tour and everybody sees it.
Mhm.
You don't have to like fucking pay for shit just for your fans to see that you're going on tour. And
Mhm.
it's just a lot rougher now, I think, because it's everything I feel is based on social media now.
Yeah,
Everything.
definitely. And I feel like back then, everything was based off of like what band is going on tour. Like if you were a band going on tour, then people wanted to know about you, rather than
Right.
now it's like, oh, you're going on tour. I don't care. Like how many Spotify monthly listeners do you have?
Yeah. I feel like people, I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but I feel like people were more stoked about music.
Hmm.
And I feel like people are kind of almost lazy about it now. Like, they don't I don't know.
Yeah, I know
I don't
if you look at it from a purely entertainment standpoint of like people go to this for their entertainment. People have a heck of a lot more options to be more entertained now than listening to this stuff. People
Right.
will be, they can get on Netflix and sit there for freaking 25 hours straight watching everything under the sun. Where it's like, I feel like the majority of music now gets consumed when you're in the car on the way to work, or if you're playing video games, or at the gym. That's like the 3 times when music is used as entertainment for people. And so it's like now people are going to so many other things for entertainment. And, as much as I'm a musician and I don't want to say this, but podcasts as well, like I'm doing podcasts take a ton away from the time people spend listening to music as well. So
Right.
entertainment back then, I felt like music was something that people sat down and just listened to some music.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but social media has just really kind of damaged things.
Mm,
It makes things not as accessible to fans, and that sucks that,
yeah.
fans are losing information because they can't see it.
Yep. Yeah, because and straight up for anyone that doesn't know, it's like the Browning has like 220,000 likes on Facebook. If I do a post, it reaches like 15,000. If I wanted to reach that full 220,000 people, it would cost probably $10,000, maybe more, at
Right.
least. And that's absolutely insane. And but yeah, I big thing that I really appreciate about your music is you have a big catalog going back, and you have very much kept this a very similar sound throughout. And so is this at least like you might have had a few tensions of going over towards a little more metal, but overall this very atmospheric, very driving electronic aggressive electronic music with heavy vocals. And so I am just curious very much about your writing process. Songwriting is like the main thing that I focus on myself. Like I focus on production, but mainly about songwriting itself. And so writing this music, how are you also keeping yourself like from writing the same thing for the past, however many years, like from just repeating the same song. I find myself accidentally writing my old songs sometimes.
I feel like that's why I made the change
Mhm.
after our second album when we were just kind of purely electronic, because I felt like, and I've seen other acts that had the similar sound from the first two Dawn of Ashes album, and they to me they all just sound the fucking same.
Mhm.
And I'm always like, I want to progress each album
Yeah.
and offer something different. And I feel like that comes from either whatever's going on in my head or what I'm listening to at the time.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think I take the chance with incorporating certain things that I don't know how fans would
Yeah.
feel about it. I I, I just go with it,
Yeah.
and if they don't like it, I'm just you know
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it's gotta be, especially when you're so deep into a career, is you have to take chances on, kind of evolving in a way no matter what that happens with the fan base. Alright, I have your music playing on my phone right now. One second. On accident. I was looking up your, other project as well, Void Stasis. Um, and so Void Stasis is very much like a big dark atmospheric project. So what's your goals with that?
So besides Dawn of Ashes, I do dark ambient,
Yeah.
which that's what Void Stasis is. I do a lot of like music scores.
Mhm.
I wrote a dark ambient album actually back in 2010. It's not really the greatest album in my opinion, but a lot of fans have requested that I do that again.
Yeah.
So um, I started heavily getting back into hardware synthesizers and
Yeah.
Eurorack modules. So I was randomly playing Destiny 2
Mhm.
and came up with Void Stasis,
There you go.
just playing the game. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do a dark ambient project.
Yeah.
So that's how that came about. We ended up signing to a label, and now I'm currently actually working on my own album.
Mhm.
And it kind of separates the formula of what I do in Dawn of Ashes, and it's like, I don't have to worry about writing vocals and
Mm.
wearing guitars, and I just, fuck with synthesizers and the Eurorack modules, and um, it's just all mood based.
Yeah, and whenever you're working with like physical synths, like the Euro rack and everything like that, I feel like that is really how you get a lot more unique of like ambient tones and drones and stuff like that, is being able to physically manipulate the hardware rather
Right.
than software.
Yeah. And I feel like it's with Eurorack modules, it's really fun because you can create a sound, and once you kind of like take the patch cables out, it's gone.
Yep.
You never, unless you like document what you did, you can't really get that sound back. I mean, even on the last Dawn of Ashes album, there was stuff I made with Eurorack modules, and I have no fucking idea what I did. And that's kind of exciting. It's
Hmm.
chaotic. You're like, if someone asks you, "Can you make that sound again?" I'm gonna be like, "No."
Yeah, that's awesome though, because it also kind of really puts you in that moment and dials you in.
Mhm.
Rather than the standard like synth stuff. Now you turn on a preset, or you're turning on you're basing stuff off of presets and stuff like that, and you can even start there with like a Euro act, but it also just puts you a lot more in that moment and doing like minute detail like manipulation to get these unique sounds. And so it really does turn it fully unique, because like you said, you can't even recreate it again, so no one else is gonna be able to as well.
Yeah, unless I, again, put it in a notebook and
Yeah. That's how you sell your Eurorack presets, is you just sell an actual notebook with the hand drawn like notes in there of how to make it.
well, actually, I'm like, currently I'm making a sample pack with all like the sounds that I make
Sick.
from this stuff. So
Yeah, and you said that you do some movie scores and you like to create music like that, and so um uh how does someone like you that's been a long-term musician in this pretty specific sound, like how do you monetize this side of stuff? A lot of people that listen to my podcast are up and coming musicians, or people that are trying to make it, or trying to make a career out of this. So how do you go about attempting to monetize like music and the career in this realm?
I mean, I do a lot of music freelance work,
Mhm,
so um, producing other artists, remixing,
mhm,
uh, just whatever I can do with my
mhm,
skills.
definitely. And you gotta take advantage of what makes you unique 100%, and, like, doing the remixes and stuff and creating unique sounds for other people, and especially producing on the side, even if it's doing synth work for people that might not have the time or ability or, equipment, and so
Yeah, I mean, I've done some ghost producing for some acts, and um, some acts will just want, orchestra or synth work.
mhm.
So,
What
you
is
know,
your favorite side of your music to work on? Like, what is your favorite part to actually get to doing?
um, I think the
Mhm,
orchestration, because I've done a lot of music for trailers, like commercial trailers,
mhm.
movie trailers, and I learned some techniques from that. And like one of the things I would love to do is do the scoring for like a video game.
Mhm.
Just have like do like full crazy orchestra stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's honestly one of my biggest, like, I more so like go to more towards movie, but I would absolutely love to work full time for a studio, like a movie studio, like making film. I would love to work for like Blumhouse or something, to where I could
Oh
just
yeah.
make like really dark, like ambient music with some like soft piano melodies and just that sort of stuff. Absolutely
Mhm.
love doing that, and love paying attention to like film scores. Like, even whenever I'm writing music, I get a lot of inspiration from that kind of stuff. Like, even whenever writing like a Browning album, like we were watching Handmaid's Tale, whenever I was writing the last album, and they had this repeating thing whenever things started getting a little intense. There was just this background synth that was like highly distorted, but
Mhm.
background enough where it wasn't annoying, but it was just going just back and forth in this really distorted tone. And whenever things would get intense, so used that on my last album, I made my own version of it, and as things would build on spots of the album, I would have that in the background to like build this tension.
Nice.
And so whenever you're writing music, it is like even with like Dawn of Ashes stuff, it is score and that sort of process. Is that something that you really pay attention to implement into the music as well?
Yeah, I mean, I love soundtracks. I'm a huge Hans Zimmer
Oh
fan.
yeah,
So I've literally I remember when Prometheus came out,
that's a good one.
and it has like one of the best soundtracks. And I literally studied the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And I did that with a couple of soundtracks. And I'm also into a lot of symphonic black metal. So all of like the Septic Flesh and Demu and
Mm-hmm.
old Cradle of Filth. I would literally listen to the orchestra
Oh,
stuff,
for
just
sure.
kind of zone everything out besides the orchestra and and I just learned the formula
Mm-hmm.
and kept doing it and doing it and doing it until I got good at it.
And so with because I also all those bands you just named, I like them for the exact same reason. I'm not huge into black metal for a lot of reasons because I feel like most of the time the production really lacks, seemingly intentionally.
Mhm.
But not stuff like Demu. Their production's through the roof. And that the symphonic black metal stuff is what I really, really can get behind. And what what's your favorite Demu song?
Well, my favorite album is Death Call Armageddon,
Okay.
and trying to think of I'm drawing a blank on the name of the song 'cause it starts with a V,
V.
and it's yeah,
There's
it's
so
like
many. They probably have like 900 songs by now.
I know I can't think of the name of the
Yep,
song. I'm sure some fan will
they know it.
point it out,
And
but
so with Demu, like what like the orchestral aspect, how do you feel about them locking in like full orchestras for their big performances now?
I mean, they have the money to do it. I think it's awesome. I
Yeah,
would love to do that myself, but I mean,
I can't imagine the budget.
yeah. I mean, same with Septic Flesh.
Hmm.
I used to talk to the lead singer. I remember I hit them up about using their orchestra, and they sent me how much it would cost, and I'm like,
Definitely.
I'll stick with contact libraries and
Definitely. And I mean, with how contact libraries are now, they are actual like sampled orchestras. So it's
right.
like you're pretty much right there. And like modern production, that is a huge thing is the difference of whenever I first started this to where production is now. Like the only like, strings that I had back in, 2004, 2005 the app just sounded like a synthesizer, but somehow it's considered a string. It's the difference is so crazy. And so, do you use a lot of like East West and stuff like that, or what do you use?
I have a lot of stuff. I mean, I use a lot of Native Instrument stuff,
Yeah,
and then
same.
um, Spitfire Audio,
Hmm.
Heaviosity.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know. I have so much shit.
yeah, and it kind of piles up. Do you think it's kind of distracting having so many options?
No, because when it comes to, I feel like when you create orchestra, like let's example a staccato string.
Hmm.
What I learned from doing trailers is that you have to stack them up, but you use different libraries. You
Okay.
don't use the same one, and that's how you kind of create your own unique,
Hmm.
um, sound when it comes to certain parts of the
Makes
orchestra.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that makes sense, but because you would get totally different tones between the two, and it would probably layer better rather than maybe when they tracked one library, they had a lot of one frequency. When at the other library, they might not. They might have had more of a different frequency, and so it could
right.
probably layer better. That makes a lot of sense. Um, and I guess so. Whenever you're doing stuff with the void stations, like this ambient, dark ambient music, are
Mhm.
you mainly on like the physical hardware synths?
So I work with two other artists. So it's me and two other
Hmm.
artists, and they use a lot of Eurorack as well.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of do a lot of Eurorack, but I'm also using VSTs
Mm-hmm.
as well. Same with my solo album that I'm doing right now. I kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
Because there's just, to me, certain things that are very hard to do on Eurorack alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I want to do choirs and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's really difficult to do it on Eurorack. You'd basically have to, because I have a module where it's like it's a sampler. I would have to sample
Oh, okay.
choir and then do it when I can just kind of pull out a
Right.
contact library and
Can you run like can you do like an output of your computer directly into like a Eurorack to like run like live samples like that, or do you have to record it onto the device?
I mean, I have a module and basically I can plug my iPhone into it and
Oh, sick.
sample. So I'll
Okay.
go onto YouTube and just sample something
Oh,
and
that's
put it
sick.
into the module.
It
Yeah.
it's interesting watching videos of, like old production where they had to sample everything. Like especially like hip hop producers and stuff, how they had to literally put a record on and like sample like a little section and then like twist it up. It's so interesting thinking about like that time frame compared to now. Like if those dudes had like if Dr. Dre had access whenever they were writing all their stuff back in the day to the crap they do now, imagine.
I know. It's definitely a lot easier now.
And so you said whenever one thing that really inspired you to get into this specific genre was in Hollywood you were going to like goth clubs and whatnot.
Mhm.
And in Hollywood, I feel like so much of stuff is kind of like who you're around, and there's like, cliques of different styles of people throughout like the city and different clubs and stuff. And was there like just DJs at these clubs, or was there like full bands playing? Like, what was the kind
It's
of vibe?
mainly DJs. I
Hmm.
mean, I would go to I would go to, industrial shows and see industrial bands play.
Yeah,
But, and this was like another thing for me. When I would go to an industrial show, like back in the day, there was something missing every single time. And I was just like, and live, I wanted to do what I did in hardcore bands and metal bands.
yeah,
I feel like that's what people enjoyed about us
mm,
is that, it wasn't just some guy on a keyboard and a guy standing there singing.
right,
That to me, that shit's boring.
uh-huh.
I can't stand seeing a band do that. So I'm like, I would go to some of these shows and be like, man, sounds good, but this is fucking boring.
Definitely,
You
yeah.
know, like,
And I was
there's
watching some live video of you guys, and you absolutely do go crazy on stage.
I try now. It's older I get. I'm like, last tour, I'm like, how am I still doing this?
Right. And I see so many hyper successful metal bands that are just like chilling.
Hmm.
And they'll like break down a hit, they'll do like two headbangs and then they'll kind of just like walk back and forth. And I'm like, maybe I need to chill out some. Maybe that's my problem is maybe I do just need to like do a couple headbangs and, just chill out a little bit.
To me, I'd rather not do music if I'm going to
Right.
get to that point.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that's something I learned growing up in the hardcore scene in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing Hatebreed before
Mm-hmm.
they were big. They were just kind of like a band from Connecticut that would come to New York.
Yeah.
But like the interaction between them and the fans and the energy,
Yeah.
it's like their energy would strike a fire into the fans and create
Definitely.
energy there. You can't really do that if you're just fucking standing there kind
Right.
of half-assing it. Like my whole thing is you either go 100% or just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
don't do it. And that was a struggle on the last tour I had because I was dealing with health issues on the tour. And I was like, fuck, I can't do what I normally can do. And I remember being with my band. I was like fucking pissed every night.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm pulling out. I almost quit the whole tour because I was just like, if I can't do what I
Mm-hmm.
normally can do, what is the?
Definitely.
But I literally did what I did and was like in fucking pain the whole time.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's one of the worst parts of tour is not being able to heal from being sick. And and for me, very much so, metal is all about that live energy, and it is absolutely what draws me to it. Like, I've considered like, oh, what if I, you know, went and played some softer music live, like if I had a project, because I'm capable of, as a lot of people are, of writing softer stuff and writing other genres, but I would never in my freaking life want to play that stuff live because you are 100% reliant on like the crowd singing the song. Like that's the only interaction they can do. If they're not singing or clapping or something, they're just sitting there staring at you. And I could not deal with that at all. And so like metal, it doesn't require anyone to know the music. It doesn't require any of that. People go crazy and it just and I'm right there with you. I cannot get myself to chill out. There's so many times that we've started a tour and I'd be like, I would say to my band, okay, I'm like, bassist, you yell at the crowd tonight because I need to preserve my voice. It's the first night of tour. If I scream at the crowd, I'm going to blow my voice. But then I jump on stage and I'm like, what's up? I'm just yelling and running around, jumping, and I blow my voice out. And I'm like, I literally can't get myself to not do that. I really can't. And I'll blow my voice out. I won't be able to scream, but I'll still be on stage looking like an idiot, headbanging and jumping around and crap. And it's just in our blood. I can't not do it. It's the music has too much energy. And how can I expect the crowd to get into it if I'm not getting into it?
exactly. I've learned some techniques from bands that we perform with. I remember we performed with the Acacia Strain, which I'm actually a huge fan of. And I was just like, fuck. Like when I saw them live, I'm like, this fucking dude is the singer. And I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Suicide Silence when we played with Suicide Silence.
Yeah.
I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just insane, you
Yeah,
know?
and those are legendary frontmen in the genre. It's funny, someone tweeted at Vincent, the singer of Acacia Strain, asked him
Mhm.
what the worst band to ever exist was, and he said the Browning.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious because we had one experience with Acacia Strain, and it was the Brownings' like second show ever. But it was in our hometown, so we were playing, towards the top of the bill because I had a lot of pre-existing fans from other bands and stuff. And the Browning, like same with you, we got really popular on MySpace before we did anything. So a lot of people there to see us. But we had issues where our laptop kept stopping in the middle of songs, just over and over, and we couldn't fix it. And we later figured out that it was because I was running like a hard drive laptop, and if it got vibrations, it would slow down the disk so it wouldn't scratch. Right?
We had the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was actually in Albany
Mm-hmm.
when we were on Metal Blade, and I remember we had the 808 pad,
Mm-hmm.
and he hit the 808 pad, and the laptop would bounce
Yep.
and literally get off
Yep.
track.
Definitely. Yeah.
We're like all fucking
Yeah, and so our only experience with them was it was a big crowd because obviously Acacia Strain draws, and at that time we were in a hometown was drawing a lot too, and probably about 7 times just in the middle of songs we just had to straight up stop because the laptop just turned off. I'm like, well, I can't play without synths. Like, what am I supposed to do here? And so
right.
it's funny because that tweet happened like probably 9 years after that, but we made such an impression that he thinks the Browning is the worst band to ever exist. So I can appreciate that. And he remembered the name. So, hey.
Well, it must have been somewhat memorable for him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's one thing with the Browning's name. I said, whether people think it's stupid or cool, they're going to remember it. So, hey. But, and I've said on the podcast before, the name of the Browning is like my absolute biggest regret. It was something that, I started this when I was young, didn't think it'd ever be something, so I just named it that. Didn't change it when I made it a full band, so I didn't think it mattered. 100% my biggest regret in not only my career but my life, because I think I'd be in like a totally different position if it had a proper name. And so, in your career with doing this, what was your biggest regret?
The whole switching full blown metal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I don't think of it as a regret,
Mm-hmm.
or because a lot of opportunities came from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And
I don't know if those opportunities would have came to us if we didn't do that. Well, we didn't make that move. I don't know if Metal Blade would have ever signed us. I don't know if we would have gone on that tour.
mhm.
We had a lot of good opportunities when we were signed to Metal Blade, and um, but probably we would have got to the same position even if we still incorporated the synths and stuff in it.
Yeah. And it's like, and you're right. It's hard. You can't necessarily look at things as regrets, because, I mean, even same with the Browning, like maybe if the name was something typical, maybe it never would have got to where I was in the first place. Maybe the stupid name helped, or at least gave some opportunities. And, and especially being in that moment whenever you are having like the opportunity, like a big label, legendary label like Metal Blades hitting you up, and you're trying to adapt in that moment and do the right thing. Like, it's hard to make those kind of decisions, especially when you're talking about like career decisions.
Right. So I'll admit one thing.
Let's hear it.
One of your guys' album was an inspiration from my last album.
What was it?
Yeah.
Which one?
Because there's one album I really fucking love by you guys.
Yeah.
It's that one with Pure Evil on it.
Yeah. Isolation.
Yeah, there's that song Dragon on it, and that song was an inspiration on the last album.
Yeah. What about it?
It's just I don't know, the chorus. The chorus is just, it's epic.
Heck yeah. And so like from that, because I feel like the ultimate purpose of music is to inspire others to create, because like who knows if I would ever have like a major successful career, but if somehow I inspire someone else and they have that, like that's the whole point, I feel like. And so, I absolutely love hearing stuff like that. And so uh like what, so from that, because now I'm just curious, like the chorus of it, you mean like the big synth with like the big, like,
I've always someone said this to me, the label that I'm on for my ambient stuff, he mentions to me that I'm really good at doing harmonics when it comes to synths. And it's the hook of the chorus that I think really got to me. It's very uplifting, and
yeah.
to me, I know like a song's good when you get like the goosebumps on it because of the chorus.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that song kind of just hit me in a way.
That's awesome. And it's so interesting to me, that song particularly, because something does really resonate with fans, like from that album. That's like the big standout. And the big inspiration for me for writing music like that was Rammstein, because one thing that Rammstein does that most like hyper successful bands won't do is they will do choruses that is all music. Like they won't do vocals. They'll do like a chant, like a 2-word chant or something in the chorus, but the point of the chorus is this melody, whether it's synth or guitar lead. And so that completely changed my mind, because I'm like, well, if we're doing aggressive music where the vocals aren't very melodic, like we in this style of music have an advantage of having the most melodic instrument, which is a synth. You can do anything with it. So I was like, instead of trying to have the chorus be the vocal, have the chorus just be the music. So I've based so many of my songs now off of that. Like Skybreaker is one of the most successful songs we have. Dragon, one of the most successful songs. I just make the synth be what the singing part of the chorus, rather than me trying to sing something. Just let the music speak for itself.
Yeah, I mean, back in the pure electronic days, one of our biggest songs was a song Abyss. Everybody fucking even now when we perform it.
Really?
And it's weird to do it now because now we have a full band doing it. But the reason why people love that song so much is because of the sample. So I sampled Alien Resurrection.
Okay.
And when we play that song, it's like everybody's screaming the sample. Like that's
Yeah.
like the hook of the song, and it's bizarre. It's like who would think a movie sample would be the driving force behind a
Well,
song?
it used to be a lot bigger of a thing to do stuff like that, especially in like deathcore and stuff. Like everything
Mhm.
would stop and then there'd be a movie sample play and then go into the breakdown. No one does that anymore.
Yeah, I know. I was listening to Black Dahlia Murder,
Mhm.
and they sampled Monster Squad, and like I'm a huge horror fan, and I was like, oh my god, it's Monster Squad. That's fucking awesome. It got you get stoked about stuff about that, I guess.
Definitely. And maybe people now are just too like concerned about like copyright infringement or crap
Yeah.
like that. Like whenever I submit, because we're signed to Universal, unfortunately, and they are like, do you have any samples, anything that we need to go try to do all this stuff? And so it's like I even completely avoid any of that stuff now because I don't want to deal with paperwork to have like some 3-second sample in a song.
Yeah,
And
we had to deal with that with Metal Blade. I
did you?
remember I sampled Richard Ramirez, and they were like, "No, you can't do that because the families are going to come attack us." And so I don't know if I should even say this on here, but I literally fucked with the sample,
Okay, there you go.
and I told him that
Re-recorded it yourself.
but it really was the same.
Oh, I've done some stuff very similar. The Browning song "Sick Minds." It's the first song on Geist. There's this really eerie ambient sound that happens in the breakdown, like it's the main sound of the song, and you would never guess it, but it was just the SpongeBob theme slowed down 800%.
Nice.
You would never guess that sound was that. It's just this eerie like sound like happening, and it's super long, but it's just the SpongeBob theme. But don't tell SpongeBob people that, please.
That's on the Void Stasis album. I literally sampled an acapella of Elvis and put it in the module and fucked with it, and no one knows
That's so
that
sick.
it sounds so fucking creepy.
Yeah,
And like if you listen to it, you have no idea that's what it is, but
exactly.
I know what it is.
Well, and the thing is, like, you can legally do that. Like, it's not like it's because you have a certain range of it has to be altered X amount to be able to
Right.
be used. So it's like there's absolutely no problem doing stuff like that. And um, I think some artists would think it'd be awesome. And maybe I need to get that Eurorack just to do that, just to do that sort of stuff because you can
That's
really get
fun.
such unique stuff. Even in the Browning song industry, that I do all the synth stuff. I can make all sorts of cool synth stuff, but I'm not good at doing like dubstep sounds ever. But it was back in those days, people wanted that sound. I was never really into it, but people really wanted it. And so to get the sound for that, I actually sampled a Transformers movie trailer and
Nice.
then sampled it and played like a wah, 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 with like this 2-second sample from a Transformers movie trailer.
That's awesome.
You got to do it. I mean, like the sounds are just sitting there waiting to be used. No one's using it.
I know. I've sampled some interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, now I really do want to look into that Euro rack. I mean, those things are expensive though, aren't they?
Yeah, it's definitely once you go down the rabbit hole, it becomes very, very expensive.
Like, how much does like base model of like something like that cost?
Well, you have to buy the case.
Oh no,
So I have 2 cases. I mean, I can't even tell you how much. It's
it
in
just
the
adds up.
thousands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's I was expecting like 4, 5, something like that. Like getting up there probably.
because I mean, one module alone is like $600. That's just one module.
So you're literally building like, this is my chorus module, this is my ensemble, this is my flanger. Like, is it like that or?
So how the easiest way I can explain it is you take a synthesizer
Mhm.
and you have your your envelope and your reverbs
Yeah.
and your oscillators. So picture building your own.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. You basically, once you look at a synth, you'll know what
Yep.
everything is because you're basically just building
Right.
um, a synthesizer, and everything just does something unique.
Yeah. And that's cool too because you can expand on it and, add one little extra piece and then, you can get totally different sounds. So that's really cool to be able to do. You kind of just like have this hardware update. Like um, I've, as a lot of people do now, look at like Mick Gordon's stuff, do the Doom soundtrack, and I watched a seminar from him on how he created like these unique sounds, and he wasn't doing any VSTs. He was talking about how he literally had like laid out like on this massive table like 50 pedals all like leading into each other, then coming through like a little 10-inch speaker amp that he remiked and then ran it back through the loop of like 50 pedals, and he's like modulating all these pedals all at once. Having physical hardware does just give a different touch.
Yeah, we did that. We worked with Chris Verena, who used to be in Nine Inch Nails, and I remember we just had weird guitar pedals all over the place, and for guitar parts, just for like one part,
Right.
but it made like the coolest fucking shit. Like, but it was just like piles of pedals all over the place. I don't know. I feel like with VSTs, it's a very easy way to do things, but sometimes I just kind of like making the mess and kind
Oh,
of,
for sure.
you know, have no idea what I'm going to do with this stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's something I really need to get into, very much so, just because I haven't messed with it, and since it are such a big part of my life and career that I really should be doing some more hardware based stuff, definitely. And with like, I mean, you put out a record last year with Dawn of Ashes, or not last year. Time's going way too fast. 2020. You put out a record in 2020 with Dawn of Ashes.
No, we released a record this year.
You did one this year as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how I didn't see that. I'm an idiot. And so
I think we when you guys made a post, someone put like our latest music video from it in the post or something.
sick.
But yeah, that was the album where the one that came out this year that I was kind of inspired by your stuff.
I'm gonna have to go try to find it. I'm gonna try to find the sections. So whenever you're writing this stuff, do you feel like what was your progression from like that 2020 record to like this record? You say you always try to level up in some way. Like what did you do on this record that really set it apart from all the rest of the Donna Ashes stuff?
I got really personal. I think that's
Lyrically?
yeah, because I had a lot of fans that came to me like after shows and just wrote to me and said like how the songs kind of hit them hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because I literally like just kind of released like a lot of mental health stuff and touchy topics, and I feel like people related to them a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like that wasn't even my goal. I had a feeling that it would dig deep within people, but it was more like I needed to write this album, and I feel like that it drove whatever came out with me with the writing. I feel like it just created the darkest shit from these emotions. And I know that there's albums that other artists like Deftones and Nine Inch Nails that their best albums were when they were in their darkest fucking place. And it just creates it's the greatest art, in my
Right.
opinion.
Definitely. And it's also people can sense whenever someone's being authentic, you know? And whenever someone is truly putting themselves out there.
Yeah, and I feel like I was as real as possible on this last album. There was like no sugarcoating anything, no kind of amplifying anything. It was just as raw as you can get. And even for myself, because I in other interviews I've told people is that some of the songs are really hard for me to even perform, you know? And I don't know, I just feel like and people will tell me it's like the best Dawn of Ashes album. And I feel like that's why. I feel it's because uh, fans can definitely feel something from it, and it helps them.
Definitely. And that is one of the best things. Our music isn't necessarily based around the lyrics most of the time. Most of the time, fans are just listening to the surface value, which is the music itself. But it is very nice being a vocalist, having someone actually pay attention to what you're saying and really looking into it. And it is one of the more gratifying things of performing live is having people be like, so this is what this meant to me. Like, what did it mean to you?
Right.
And it really is super satisfying because you're just like, wow, someone's actually paying attention. Like, because really it is most of the time just surface value, like, people liking music, but having someone actually dive in is really nice. And what was sort of the stuff from this record that people most were like feeling applied to them?
Yeah, I touched on topics of mental health issues, from depression to relationship struggles to triggers to um, trauma therapy. And like the whole concept of the album is based on a emotional Dante's Inferno. So basically you descend into the depths of hell and end up into an emotional limbo, and then kind of reaching some sort of paradise, which is kind of emotional stability. It's not really a great place, but it's kind of just being okay. So there's just 3 sections of the album, and I know everybody's been there. So
And so you feel that it is like, you're going to talk about like these sort of feelings and these experiences that you've personally had, but also um, other people experience, but might not be so open about talking about it.
yeah, and I mean, I feel like I'm sure you were like this when you were younger. Your therapist was music.
Yeah.
These bands, like these albums. There's albums that saved me when I was a kid. It was like the only thing I felt like that I was connecting with.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like a lot of artists do that much anymore. A lot, and especially in like mainstream, it's very hollow in my opinion. There's no emotions to it anymore. It's fabricated, and I feel like that's what's lacking in the music industry, is that there's no real emotions that you can really connect with.
Hmm. Yeah. And I have a big issue with modern mainstream music and the topic matter that it's typically to. And maybe this makes me sound like a boomer, but like to have like music that is going towards a young audience that is strictly influencing them in ways that pretty much can only negatively impact their life. Drugs, drinking yourself to death, like those sort of things. If you have a voice, you should be trying to use it for a positive affirmation for people rather than being like, go to these things that could probably really negatively impact you.
And I just feel like it's very fake now. It's
Yeah.
just really fucking fake. And I'm not going to mention a name, but there's an artist, and she was doing an interview, and she's just acting a certain way, and you're like, God damn, you're so fucking fake. And I look at someone like Bjork, like
Mm.
an interview with Bjork, and you're like, it's so believable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just feel like there's just such a difference between now versus then.
Yeah, and then I think a lot of times back then people were being authentic, and there wasn't this attempt at mass stardom on the internet where now everyone's trying to do whatever is just going to get the kids attention and get you insta fame, where before the people that were did have a voice were there for a reason, and they had a purpose behind what they were doing. Like obviously there was still the, especially when you get towards the hair metal days and stuff like that, there was still like the we're just gonna be crazy party rock stars and people are into that. But a lot of music from back then for me personally did feel like it was a little more in the vein of like what you're talking about when you're talking about like Nine Inch Nails music, stuff like Hurt, when you're talking about Ministry music, or even like Fear Factory, talking about some real crap about, demanufacture and corruption and all that sort of stuff. They were talking about some real stuff that people think about but might not voice outwardly. And so for you to voice something outwardly that someone else has bottled up forever is why I feel people connect on such a deep level with music that is authentic like that.
Right, and I like with Downward Spiral, I don't feel like it would have sounded the same if, Trent wasn't going through so many struggles. Like
Hmm.
it you can tell from that album that there's just like pain and suffering in it.
Hmm.
And I feel like with now too, it's like you can tell in the music too how fabricated it is.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just the rawness and the attitude behind everything is, it just doesn't feel like what you're saying, authentic and real. It just seems very just like fabricated and
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe it's just me being old now that
That's what I'm
I just
saying, dude.
don't
We're
get
just
it.
we're just boomers, man.
Right.
And I mean, for me, it has to be one way or the other. So either it is truly authentic to who you are, or it is like a story. You know,
Mhm.
like for me, when I wrote my last record, I luckily had actually been in the best, happiest point of my life, but I was writing the darkest, heaviest music I'd ever written, and so to have a theme that fit it, I actually was like, I have to create a story. So I wrote a story about mass destruction and, everything like that, because I still wanted the lyrics to fit the sound of the music, but I wasn't about to, say a bunch, make up stuff about, how, negative things in my life, because I was in a very positive point in my life. And so I think that, um, the lyrics have to match the music tonality wise, but the lyrics have to be either authentic to you or something like that tells a story in itself, like, fiction.
Yeah, and people ask me because there's certain albums I won't perform,
Hmm.
and one of the ones is the one on Metal Blade, and it's not the fact that really I don't think the music's good at all. It's just I feel like Dawn of Ashes is a different pieces of my personality and my emotions. And that album, it wasn't really about that.
Hmm.
And that's why it's hard for me to connect with it
Hmm.
because to me, the story of myself and Dawn of Ashes, and it's part of the reason why I've never given up on Dawn of Ashes because I would feel very lost if I wasn't in it anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but each album, like, just kind of portrays like what I'm going through or what's going on in my mind. And certain albums, I just don't like that one particularly. I just don't feel like is really telling a story about that.
Hmm.
And that's why it's like difficult for me to kind of connect with that.
Definitely. And I do feel that whenever you play something live, that there's some songs that every time that I sing this particular part, that I almost get like choked up for whatever reason. Like To be honest, I'm not too um in my emotions often. I get told that I'm very not emotionally connected sometimes. But even then, sometimes whenever I'm, saying this very emotional lyric from an older record, I actually feel it. Actually, Dragon, some of the lyrics in that song kind of get me a little bit sometimes whenever I'm doing it live. And there's just something about performing these lyrics that are tied to something directly. Do you almost so I was gonna ask, do you almost feel like sometimes you would want to write something that's not so emotionally tied to you so that you don't have this connection to it, or that connection is your purpose?
No, I feel like I need to.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have to because I feel like that's what makes me go on with this this
The
band.
project. Yeah.
'Cause I mean, it's like there's so many struggles being in this group,
Yeah.
and I question, I'm like, "Why am I still doing this?" It's like fucking 22 years, like,
Yeah.
um, and I feel like that's what keeps me going is that, uh, I have a way to express whatever's going on in me into a musical form and have it resonate with, Dawn of Ashes fans.
Yeah. And I actually feel that a lot because I think every musician at some point has moments where they say that exactly. Like, what am I doing? Like there's plenty of reasons to not want to continue on, especially getting older. It's like financially it takes a lot of time and effort and stress to write a music like this whenever you could be spending that time being financially responsible or whatever it might be. But I absolutely feel an obligation to my fans with the music to where in the times that I felt most like, what am I doing? Like, I need to stop this because, it takes so much effort or is so stressful, especially with all the label bull crap I've been with. There's been times when I've really just not wanted to care about it anymore, but I didn't. It's like the one thing that like people would be disappointed if I stopped, and I don't want to disappoint people. I feel like I have an obligation, and now I'm in a way better part of my life where it's like I want to do it. I don't have those questions now, but there was plenty of times throughout where the only reason I was doing the Browning still at that time was because I felt an obligation to the fans.
I mean, I can't even count how many times I'm like, I mean, we actually did pull the plug, um, I think it was 2014,
Hmm.
and I couldn't
Couldn't get
keep it
away.
that way. I
Yeah.
was just like, "What the fuck am I doing?"
Yeah.
And I feel like every time it's like, I mean, even after this last tour, I was like, "Man, I can't do this anymore." And now I'm literally writing another Dawn of Ashes album. It's just like, and there's just something in me that it just can't stop. It's like an addiction, I feel like.
Yeah, and this is something I've said recently, quite often, because whenever COVID started and the music industry completely shut down, like I started a proper business, like selling products, and something I realized not only about my mentality but talking to other musicians is, um, musician like being a dedicated lifelong a lifer in music in general, like has the same mentality that has to be there for like entrepreneurs, like because essentially a band is an entrepreneurship. Like you are starting a a product that you're trying to build, and you are absolutely dedicated, and the mentality that these lifelong musicians have is like perfect for entrepreneurship. And so something I'm actually really wanting to get into now is helping musicians build companies outside of music so they can be financially stable, because like imagine if there was a product that you had that you loved as much as Dawn of Ashes. It's just nice to have something to be financially viable outside of music. Like the mentality that musicians have is absolutely right there with like super super successful entrepreneurs, and like that feeling of I can't let this go away because I've put this much effort and I'm so passionate.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people. They're like, one of the things that they say about me is they're like, my drive is just fucking insane, and it's like, they're like, literally, you're on another album and you're writing 2 other albums,
Yeah.
and it's just like, it's. I'm like, I don't know how to stop.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, if I stop doing it, I start getting, like, uncomfortable. I'm like, "Okay, so fuck am I gonna do?" Like,
Yeah.
so I'm, like, literally back on another al or, like, something will come into my head.
Mhm.
I'll just be driving and something will come into my head, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool," and then it's all of a sudden spiderweb effects, and now I'm back into the name of an album, the cover design,
Yeah.
like, this is what I'm gonna do on it, and I'm like, "Shit," I'm like, "I just told myself I was gonna give myself a break."
Yep.
It's just how it
Yep.
happens.
Exactly. I'm the same way at all times. There's sounds going through my head. My phone is just full of videos of me, saying these things so I can try to lay it down later.
Yeah.
And it's a nonstop thing. And I do not think it's something we can get away from. And it's actually something that I'm currently, that I currently do struggle with like mentally because I got so involved in this business that I've been doing. It has been very successful to where like I have to pay attention to that. And I haven't written very much music since I put out the last record, and that came out in like 2020. And I haven't written very much music, and it is dragging me down so hard mentally. Just that the fact that I've like since then I've done like 3 songs maybe. Like that is one of the biggest like stressful things. Like I feel like I'm wasting time because I'm not putting out music. I feel like I'm disappointing people because I'm not putting out music. It's like it's bad.
I also like to one up myself, and
Mm,
I do that with the concept of our music videos, like,
yeah.
I'm all about striking some sort of spark into someone, even if it's
Yeah.
negatively. So, our music videos are very hard for some people to watch,
Hmm.
and same with when we perform.
Yeah.
But it's just like my one up mentality. It's like that music video is fucked up. What can I do to make the next video even more fucked up and it look better,
Yeah.
and the special effects are insane. That's what happens to me. I write an album and I'm like, yeah, this album's cool. What can I do to
Yep.
get to the next level?
You trying to be modern day Gigi Allen or something?
Not not to that extent.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably best.
Yeah,
That
that's a little too much.
and that could only have existed in that exact time. If someone
Oh
was doing
yeah,
that stuff now, holy crap.
I know, I know. There's certain things I do that are risky. I've been permanently banned from TikTok. I'm not allowed
Oh,
on
really?
TikTok because I posted a video from something that we released on Metal Blade, years ago, and yeah, I got this message that I'm not allowed on TikTok.
They couldn't handle it.
So
And that's one thing that shows the difference of 2010 to even now, It's I think about some of the music that was on the radio in early 2000s or these music videos that were on MTV, back in the early 2000s or 90s. Totally
yeah,
different ballgame.
we released this music video a couple months ago, and our European booking agent, she's like, I don't know if you should release that. I already got a complaint from this promoter for this festival that they don't want you playing there because they think you're a woman abuser. And I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, give me a fucking break. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, it is just that is one thing about the industry now is people being too concerned about being canceled or whatever it might be, and it is a shame that you're trying to do something creative and it could be perceived as no, he's actually like that, he's trying to like people listen to my music and they'll come to me, and like the last album I was talking about, a being that was coming to destroy all of humanity and consume their souls and kill every living human being, and they're like, "Well, you have a kid. Like, why are you writing stuff like that?" I'm like, I don't actually want everyone to die. That's not what I'm saying.
I know. What about movies and horror movies and stuff
Exactly.
like that? Like, you're really gonna take that to the heart. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's funny because I think it was last year. I posted a photo, and it was actually a photo of me from 2013, and it literally got like I, I got attacked by the cancel culture.
Really?
They attacked me, and I'm like, I didn't get this much attention back then for this photo. Like,
Yeah. What was so wrong with the photo?
it was me burning a Bible or something like that,
Really?
and I just got attacked, and I'm like, but this photo's so old, and I
Right.
like,
You would
I,
think people would be way more into that nowadays.
I, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought it was amusing. I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Anything like that, I do very much so sit back and just be like, whatever. Like, I cannot be bothered at all currently about any sort of those sort of opinions and people trying to take away from art to, try to cancel someone. And there are justified reasons to cancel people, but definitely a creative music video that's telling a story about something, that's not a reason to cancel someone.
Yeah, and I'm just like thinking in my head. I mean, that's what like Dawn of Ash is all about. I mean, if you actually watch the music videos,
Yeah.
there's nothing tame about it. Like,
Definitely.
that's not really my goal with this group.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
so moving forward, because Dawn of Ash is still really good, like listener base, like, and so what is the goal moving forward, like, with what you're doing? Like, is it, sign, try to get on as many playlists as possible? Is it try to, like, what are you doing to progress it, or do you like where it's at?
I actually, after the tour, I sat back and kind of evaluated things, and I had a lot on my mind because, like I said, I was like about to pull the plug, and then I'm like, don't want to do that. So I'm like trying to figure out what I'm doing,
Yeah,
everything. Label wise, I mean, we're on a label, but I'm kind of open. I'm just trying to find bigger opportunities,
yeah,
especially like touring. Like, one of the things is I want to go on tour with like a more successful band
mm-hmm,
than I don't want to do headlining
definitely,
tours anymore. And it's like I kind of want to um, gain new fans that have never heard from us, and that's kind of like why I've been trying to get into the deathcore scene,
definitely,
because I feel like these fans have never heard something like this, and they're hearing stuff with like synths and
yep.
stuff that it'd be interesting to see, what they've thought about us.
Well, there's plenty of crossover, especially if you have the energy live. Like, that's all that matters, and you do have the energy live. And for me, the most successful tours that, I mean, you're exactly right. You can't do headlining tours forever because then you're not bringing new heads to it. You have the same exact people coming and even dwindling. So you can't just do headline tours forever. You're exactly right on that. And for me, it was like the tours that have always been most successful turnout wise, or turn over, like as in fans coming from that tour to our next headliner, because that's the goal. Garner fans from these other tours so that your next headliner actually has people there, is stuff like Mushroomhead, Fear Factory, Static X, like tours like that have like kind of these older, more mainstay fans. They absolutely come out and support. Problem I feel in deathcore, or like the core genres in general, is people are very like hype train driven. Like, they're this is the popular band right now, so we're going to that, and don't really care what else is happening, just want to see the TikTok thing. And so, like, I feel like those are nice because there's a ton of heads there. But really the more mainstay bands is those fans. If these people have been listening to Mushroomhead for 25 years, they're gonna listen to the Browning. Like, that was kind of my thought process.
Yeah, and I feel like the I'm trying to gain more younger
Young
fans
fans, yes.
because
You
I
have to
feel
have young
like
fans.
yeah, I feel like well, I mean, I've actually seen it. Our fan base is like late 20s, 30s, around there,
Yeah.
and like Motionless in White, very young fans. And
Yeah,
it's like I like Motionless in White fans with like Dawn of Ashes.
for sure. Yeah.
Um, so I'm just like I'm trying to figure out how to get past the wall right now. And
Mhm.
one of the things is going on another tour with a more successful band,
Mhm.
trying to figure out maneuver past the whole social media bullshit. And I don't know, just
Yeah.
write another album, I guess.
Definitely. I mean, we're living in a time definitely when you can have a career as a touring musician, and you can also have a career as just a musician that puts music out online and makes money off of that. And so it's like it's nice because we actually do have options nowadays where I do feel like before you absolutely were 100% had to tour or you weren't doing nothing. But
Yeah.
nowadays I feel like you do have the option to have a successful music career without it. But it definitely helps gain lifelong fans doing like those tours 100%. And like you said with the wall, that's an issue on so many levels, because I do feel like there's like a couple tier lists that once you hit the top of that tier, like it's so hard to break into that next tier, but that next tier is so significant that it's like right there, it's like you go from being a band that gets paid $100 to $200 a night, and then you straight jump up to like 600-700. Then from that you jump up to almost 2,000, and then from that tier you jump to like 8. Like it's such a significant jump every single time, and right when you get on that precipice, it's like it's hard to break to that next tier. But there's issues with every single tier. I mean, even like talking to bands that are hyper successful, like talking to like Electric Callboy, like they are absolutely killing it. They've always been doing 2 to 4,000 people in Germany every single show, and they'll go to Japan and do 2,000 people. But even then, they're like, "Well, how do we break that in the States?" I'm like, "Why do you care? Like, like you're fine." But everyone always wants that next tier, and it's so hard to get to it. It really is.
Yeah, it's just for a band with our history, it's hard to be relevant now. I feel like because we were at some point and now it's trying to become relevant again. I feel like that's where the wall is for DOA.
Yeah.
Not to say we don't have a good fan base. I just feel like with the right opportunity, we can have even more.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I don't think in any way like being a long-term band is a negative effect at all. And so if people have seen the name, and so if they, see the name in the modern world, they're like, "Oh yeah," and then, popping on the new train. And so 100%, especially with your style and especially in the realm that we are now, with streaming being such a big aspect and listening being such a big aspect, I think that this style of music has more potential than any genre, really.
Right.
And so, yeah, I 100% think that you'll be totally chill. You'll be good.
Right on.
Heck
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. And so on uh, the new stuff, when do you think this new record's going to be done?
I
Five
don't know. I've been
years?
kind of just working on it on a slow pace. It's like I'm just being very anal about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's like I have this like sound in mind, and unless I like fully like capture that sound, like
Hmm.
I don't want to release it.
Definitely.
So I just been kind of pacing myself with it.
One nice thing about the modern world too is I don't think it's as beneficial to release like 12 song records anymore. I feel like it's like 3 songs is all you have to do.
That's the other thing I was been in my head. I'm like, how many fucking songs am I gonna do like this? I'm like, do I do 12 songs? Do I do
Right.
10? Like, I'm like, what? the hell am I doing?
I feel like people our age want to do a full record because we want a full scope. But I think in the modern world, with having to put out as much music as possible to stay relevant, I feel like the 3-song limit is like where it is. Yeah, I feel like that's like the sweet spot because you constantly have new music out.
Yeah, it'll get released at some point.
My allergies are popping off right now, and we've been going for an hour and a half. So
Really, it's been that long?
It has been an hour and a half.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, when you get two, synth metal dudes talking, what do you expect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you being here and chatting with me, and you need to send me your new music as you work on it as well.
Yeah, and maybe we should tour together at some point.
Tour, collab on songs. That's one thing look at me, I'm freaking crying. These allergies. You got me all you're talking about emotions and stuff, and look at me now. And one thing I really want to do is do a lot more collaborations with artists in our style. And so 100%, because you make some sounds that I absolutely cannot. So everyone needs to go check out your stuff.
Surprised you guys haven't done like a remix album with the type of stuff you do.
So it's actually finished. And remember when I said, unfortunately, I signed to Universal? Things take a long time whenever you're signed to some crap like this. So yeah, we've had a remix record done now for about 6 months. So
nice.
We'll get there.
All right.
Yeah, the red tape, you know how it is. Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking to me, man, and I will talk to you here soon.
All right, cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, peace out.
All right.
Thank you for listening all the way through that episode. And don't forget, head over to burnthisworld.com and click Become a Member. For only $3 a month or $30 for an entire year, you get a bunch of exclusive content and you help support the podcast being a full-time thing. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.